every moment that we exist and act of our own free will, every choice we make, we are literally improvising as we go. Now, since I'm an actor, I've trained very hard and for many years, both as an actor and as an improviser. So improvisation has another connotation. And when I tell actors that they should learn improvisation, they're thinking, okay, you want me to get up on stage and you want me to make up funny scenes, basically like whose line is it anyway? Which is definitely a very small part of improv. But again, it's a small, specific slice of improv. Really, when we're talking about improv, we're talking about being in the moment. We're talking, and this is what improv training can do for you. It can help you to be in the moment. It can help you to play.
Lincoln, welcome to the show. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Excited to be here with you guys. This has been fun already. We just started. What the heck?
We actually haven't even started yet.
Right?
What up, man? Glad we get this together.
Yeah.
Absolutely glad to be here.
Yeah, super excited. So we always like to tee it up. We ask the question at the beginning, what's your favorite tip to navigating difficult conversations? And since we're all about compassionate conversation, and you said taking a breath, staying centered, and speak your truth respectfully. All of those things, even taking a breath, can be difficult when you're fired up or somebody just called your mom a name. How do you access that in a moment when you need to?
I think it's a constant reminder, and for sure, I don't always do it in the moment, and then afterwards, I'm like, oh, I should have done that. I should have taken that breath. But so I think it's over time we learn, we make mistakes, and we learn, and we remind ourselves each time to do a little bit better. But there's so many things in my life that I just cruise through. And sometimes that's great. And sometimes it's like, I need to stop. I need to listen. I need to listen to myself. I need to listen to, my intuition, or, from above, whatever you want to call it. And so I think it's that reminding yourself, and that life experience too reminds us of what's important. And in the moment, we don't always do what we've planned to do, but afterwards we remember to do a little bit better. So I have had enough experiences where I'm getting to the point where I can remember better now that it's time to pause and take that breath.
We don't always do what we planned to do.
We don't.
That is a place where I think there's, at least for me, that's where the lack of self-compassion creeps in. That's where I start to admonish myself or jump on myself for not being who I wanted to be or who I see myself as. How do you take a beat there? How do you give yourself, or do you give yourself grace? Like how do you manage that?
I heard an amazing quote this morning, and it struck me as completely new, even though I had read the book before. Someone, a really, really great manager in Los Angeles named Diversa Manis, said, she was quoting The Art of War, I believe. And I want to see exactly, I wrote it down. I was listening, and she said, her paraphrase was, use all available weapons to guard your spirit. So again, I'm trusting, this is secondhand, so it may be from a different book. She may have mixed it up, but whoever it's from, I thought that was beautiful, to use all those weapons at hand to protect your spirit. Because at the end of the day, sometimes we don't leave those resources in place to preserve what's most important and to preserve maybe our North Star, or to preserve those reserves that we need to be able to do what we need to do. And that just struck me today. And Rodney, when you said that, that's what popped up for me, was we always need to leave something in the tank, to some gas in the tank, however you want to call it, to preserve our spirit, because that's what gets us through everything. And that is just so important. And I don't know about you guys, but for me, a lot of the time, I often run too empty. Like, oh, I've got to go do this. I've got to meet with this person. I've got to go do this. And it's just jumping from one thing to the other. And I forget. And it's those times where I can say, hang on, let's make sure I keep something for myself in the tank. And I'll be totally honest, sometimes it's my wife who's reminding me, hey, don't give it all away yet. Keep something there so that you can make it through the day emotionally and spiritually, which I think is really a great lesson.
The frame, that's a beautiful quote. Whoever we can attribute it to, I'm sure if we type it all into the internet, we'll be able to attribute it to something. So we'll be sure to do that before it releases. But the idea that it is a reminder, right? Because we do fail. And sometimes we override ourselves. I do this with my wife, where for whatever reason, I've let my ego say, no, I'm not going to act the way I want to act because I'm going to be spiteful because you're not acting the way I want you to act, right? Or towards me, act towards me. So then it's instead of, but when you have that constant reminder, and I catch myself in these moments going, yeah, but no, this is where you want to be, and having that fight with myself, because of those constant reminders, and framing it as such that you just remind yourself like all the time that it's there and it's a tool and it's something that you should use, and you may choose not to use it, or you may fail to use it and have to reconcile it later. But the more you practice, the more you remind, the better you get over time. So I love that how you frame that as a reminder.
So true. And some people forget too that even if you've got a goal, every failure to meet up to your goal is also a reminder.
Yeah.
The failure itself is helping propel you forward. So.
Well,
that's
I appreciate you digging deeper into that. I mean, you got deep fast. Your tree was oak because you go deep. Like you weren't kidding.
Yes.
Like, yeah, you're rude. Like normally we have to tease all of that out in like 5 to 10 minutes. Nope, time to move on. Let's talk about improv. In your bio, you talk about the importance of improv, not just for actors, but for everybody. And you give some bullet points as to its importance, but I'd love to dig deeper on the importance that you see improv providing to the existence of others who may not be acting or aspiring to act, but simply just doing improv for the hell of it or for other purposes.
Absolutely. Yes. Improv to me is just, it's such a part of daily life. I mean, every moment that we exist and act of our own free will, every choice we make, we are literally improvising as we go. Now, since I'm an actor, I've trained very hard and for many years, both as an actor and as an improviser. So improvisation has another connotation. And when I tell actors that they should learn improvisation, they're thinking, okay, you want me to get up on stage and you want me to make up funny scenes, basically like whose line is it anyway? Which is definitely a very small part of improv. But again, it's a small, specific slice of improv. Really, when we're talking about improv, we're talking about being in the moment. We're talking, and this is what improv training can do for you. It can help you to be in the moment. It can help you to play. It helps you, and I think play is so important for mental health, for physical health. Even when we're talking about that playing with improv, you are using your creativity. You're firing neurons that may have never fired together. You're using your brain in new and different ways by improvising. And yes, when we teach improv, we teach it through specific games that may be kind of in that specific slice of getting up and, throwing words back and forth or building a scene together. But and as we talked a little bit too, there's a real relational component. You can improve relationships. You can improve communication with improvisation. You can improve your confidence with improvisation. It's such an all-encompassing skill. And I think a lot of times people look at it, oh yes, we're talking about getting up on a stage and making funnies, which is understandable, but it's just so it's so all-encompassing. I was not an actor until I started doing improv, and I got into an improv troupe, and I loved it so much that I was like, I want to learn how to be a better actor so that I can be a better improviser. And that's why I started taking acting classes and started getting film jobs eventually. So that was originally how I approached acting, was this very spontaneous, fluid, and I guess the overall word that comes to mind is freedom. I think improvisation has a lot to do with freedom, but ironically at the same time has a lot to do with structure. Sometimes the structure of improvisation, or giving yourself a game to play, can really rein in your creativity and let your creative mind go crazy because you're not doing this. Like, what? I could say anything I want right now. There's too many choices. You're like, no, we've got one word we're working with. Now I have 75 things that are coming to mind, or 10, or whatever it is. That form gives you places to play from. It gives you that specificity of that form, allows you to let your creativity free. And I guess the one thing that I would say in addition to that is something very popular right now that encompasses much of that, if not all of it, is this idea of yes and. I'm sure you guys have heard of that. I'm sure a lot of people have heard of that. And yes and is a phrase that was coined in improvisation, which hinges on this principle of agreement. When you're trying to build a scene together in improv, you want to agree on facts and build on them instead of throwing out something and then the other person says, no, that's not true. That's more like a no instead. But when you're yes-anding, let's say we're creating a scene, it's like, hey, I saw you got a new red Porsche. That's like the information I've put. And the other person can say, I didn't get a new car. And then they're basically swatting that away. But if you start with, oh, I saw you got a new Porsche, and you agree with it and add something specific. You're like, yeah, and I stole it from a bookie. So I've hidden it in your garage. So don't tell anyone. It's, where did that come from? It came from the specific form and structure of one person saying, I saw you got a new red Porsche. And the other person's mind goes crazy. And instead of thinking, how do I want to get rid of that? They're like, how can I build on red Porsche? Well, for some reason, the first thing that came to my mind was I stole it from a bad guy.
What's going on in your life right now, Lincoln?
I'm Robin Hood, I think. I think that's what it is. I'm going to use that Porsche to help the poor. Improv also tells us a lot about what's going on in our lives at any given moment. If we're being free and fluid with it. Yeah, so I've said too much. You
yeah, clearly. We're going to have to cut this episode.
No, it's man, there's a lot there. I think the one of the first things you said was the idea of being present and presence. And I didn't realize that's like, it turns out that's one of the reasons, that's why I love improv so much, and things that put me in an active improv state, Dungeons and Dragons and things like that. It's why I love them so much, but I hadn't thought about it until, I don't know, it was a couple weeks ago, Keith. I sent you that video of whose line is it anyway? Wayne Brady and Mark Rebier improving music together on the interwebs, and they stop to talk. And Wayne Brady's like, yeah, it's about presence. It's about being in the moment. You can't, if I'm going to be with you in a scene to make, or in whatever, to make whatever, I've got to be here. I can't be thinking about the soup that I'm going to make later, or else this isn't going to work. And it's almost a hack to getting into presence for people that, and I think this is why I liked it, because I had a really strong monkey mind pre doing a lot of improv. And to your point of structure, like having a space to explore that and to see, then I could see it because it was coming out of my mouth. And when it didn't necessarily match with what was happening in the scene, it's like, well, okay, like now I can kind of see my brain out loud, and it started to give me my own reference for structure. But I'm loving. Yeah, I love this idea of, and then the play part is important too, for sure.
Can I just throw two more things on top of that real quick? Because what you said about presence is so true, and part of presence, which is there's something that underlies all of what we've just talked about with improv, and that's listening. And it applies to the conversations that we were talking to. If you're not listening, we used to say listening like a ninja or listening like a wizard. If you're not like mega listening, you're going to miss so much. You're not going to be in a space where you can grab onto that idea of the red Porsche or whatever it is. If you missed it entirely, you can't add to that. You can't build on. But if you're listening, and if you're really giving your presence to listening, half of the work is so much easier and already done for you. And the other thing that I wanted to say too is that people may be listening that say, oh yeah, I could never do improv, or I'm not a very present person. I'm not a very confident person. I'm not a very good listener. That is one of the absolute wonderful things about improvisation is, just like you said, Rodney, it's a form that teaches you, that can literally, it gives you a form in which, a structure in which to learn all those incredibly valuable skills. And that's why my business partner and I, Eric Artel, long before the pandemic, came out with an online course where you could literally learn improvisation. It's a video on demand course with play along videos. But we wanted to make this, again, before the pandemic, before they were doing, everyone's doing Zoom classes. We wanted to, we are so passionate about it. We wanted to make it available to everyone in every country, because we do believe that improv can literally improve people's lives on every level, behind the scenes, in your thinking and all that. So that second point being, it can be learned, even if you're a very shy person, or you don't feel very creative. Improv is one of the absolute funnest and best ways to dive into learning. So I absolutely highly recommend that.
What's fascinating about improv is it's an opportunity to let go of control, because none of us have control, but we perceive like we do. We think about the social constructs that we have. They're all solid entities. They're all human created, right? The only thing solid is my desk, and I can still burn it down, right? So, these
technically it's not really solid, but
our perceptions of control that lead to anxiety, stresses, and like I'm going through right now because I'm buying and selling a house and all of these things, like everything that you're saying about improv, which makes me want to do it because it accesses just a present state of flow in a uncontrolled, controlled way. And I think it's a practice of lack of control, which then leads me to a question specifically about doing online improv courses. And I'm curious to get your take as people continue to work from home, as people continue to look to build connections remotely where we can't make eye contact, we can't exchange handshakes, we can't read each other's full body language. We miss a lot of those things, which improv in a way relies heavily on because you're really improvising that entire human interaction. How have you seen the online differ from in-person and even potentially strengthen people's access to online connection when we can't have it because of the pandemic?
That is a great question. People told us at the beginning that it couldn't be done. Like there's no way you could teach improv online. And
one of my favorite statements, by the way.
Yeah,
I love it.
right?
Yeah.
But the problem with that statement, the reason why I already knew that wasn't true was because I had practiced improvisation for hours upon hours upon hours by myself. And I had made myself so much better and so much more confident so that when I got up on stage with people and in front of an audience, I was light years ahead of where I was the previous week when I was more nervous, just because I had spent so many hours. And here's what I did. I just went to, I was at college, in college at the time. I went to Brigham Young University, and there was a auditorium in which we performed. And it was also a lecture hall. It was 300-seat theater. And I would go in, and I was nervous. I was very nervous to get up in front of people without a script. And so I was like, hey, I'm going to go into this theater where we perform and kind of make it mine. And I would get up on stage, and I literally, this was in the mid 90s when I had just gotten my first, phone. And I would set a timer on my phone for, I can't remember, it was 20 or 30 minutes. And it was like, I am going to improvise a play by myself until the timer goes off. And that was the only structure. That was the only form, is that I had to keep talking and doing stuff until that hour ran out. And I cannot tell you how much amazing practice it was and how much it did for me. So I think the analogy that we can draw, let's say you want to be a professional soccer player, right? There's no substitute for getting out on the field and playing in a game. Like, you have to do that if you want to become a professional soccer player. But every professional soccer player also goes to the gym. They lift weights, they isolate skills. They'll go out against a brick wall, or they'll go out with a rebounder, and they'll just practice 500 times kicking that ball by themselves, kicking, working on that precision. Then they may do sit-ups to work on their core. Then they may dribble with cones all around. So I think that the analogy that I'm making is that there are so many more of those kind of exercises for improv than people ever imagine, that you can isolate and you can get so good at, so that when you then come together with a group, they're already worked. You're already better. And then your cognitive load is lightened. You're not thinking about the dribbling because you've practiced that by yourself so much. Instead of dribbling, you're kind of dribbling intuitively in the scene, and you're listening like that wizard to what the other guy is saying or the other girl is saying in the scene. And you don't have to think about the dribbling because you've just worked that. And that's what our course does. It lets you work on those skills. We've had a lot of people who were so terrified and would not get up in front of people in a class, but wanted to learn improv, or their agent told them they had to learn improv. So they took our course. And by the time they were done with the course, they were like, I can do this. I can get up in front of a group now and do it. And it's not like doesn't wipe away your fear entirely. It doesn't wipe away that anxiety entirely, because that's a healthy part of the process. But it lets you concentrate fully on the other person and the other person's offers, instead of looking at yourself. You kind of feel like you're taken care of, and you can focus on the other person. So our course was never meant to completely eradicate the need to get up with other people. But what it really does well is it lets you practice the skills so that you can hop up with those other people. And many of those things are like second nature. And there's a lot of other skills, like delivering monologues. There's a lot of things that come up in shows, space work or space object work, where you're manipulating space in a scene. None of that requires other people. And so our course allows you to work on those things so that you're not self-conscious of it, or you become very, very good at it by yourself or with your friend. We've got people who take it with their family, their siblings, or their friends. So they're also, working on those things together. But it was never meant to completely get rid of that need. But we've seen, I personally feel like in a lot of ways, it's a better way of teaching improv than getting someone who's terrified and saying, get up on stage in front of these 20 people and do something. And I'll explain if it was good or bad afterwards. For some people, that is not the place. For probably most people, that is not the most strategic place to start. And that's where we've had amazing success.
More people fear public speaking than they do dying, right? So when you force the public speaking aspect, you shut off all ability to learn any other functional things that sentiment of confidence and skills. And the way you framed it, right? You build a muscle memory in a way. Even if it's not good, you're not thinking about it as much because you know how to hold a bat or put it on your shoe. You're not thinking about, am I holding the bat right? And then standing up and trying to hit a pitch, right?
Just because there's different skills needed. There's different levels of skills. To continue the soccer analogy on, and I love what you said, it lets you focus on the other person, like doing the self-work. So I'm seeing all these parallels between improv and life, and like how life is improved by improv, which is what you said. Playing soccer, the people that I play with that played at a high level or just know soccer, their
Wait, Rodney,
phrase
you
they
play
often.
soccer? I love it.
I kick a ball with people who play soccer,
and he runs around on a field.
Me too.
I enjoy it. I play. My wife played in college. She played high level, and so when we're playing together, the thing she says most frequently to me and to other people is, "What you see?" or "What do you see?" And for me, when I started playing, I didn't see anything because I was looking at the ball.
You're looking down at the ball.
So I was completely focused on me and my feet, and I couldn't see the open space, or I couldn't see the open person or the person running at me to take the ball. And so I think, continue on, like you get that self-time, you get that dribbling practice, you get that, then you can look up and it's like, oh, look, there's a whole game. There's a whole field in front of you.
That's exactly right. Our course helps you work on those and isolate those basic skills so that you're not staring down at the ball, so that you're intuitively handling the ball, and you can exactly look up and see other people, and you see all those other options that you can't see if you're just looking down at the ball. That's great. That's a great part of the analogy, Rodney. Thank you.
I was thinking about this in terms of what we teach, and our whole methodology is about how we can give easily compassion to others, like just access it. How do we access it? How do we function it? As simple as it sometimes seems to just say, be compassionate. It's super hard in many situations. And a lot of times to truly access it, or the conversations around empathy, to truly access that for another person, you have to be able to reflect internally. And you have to be able to see yourself for who you are in order to effectively see others for who they are. Because if you're all bogged down with baggage, you're going to project all that baggage onto somebody else. And then it's just going to be a contentious circumstance more often than not. Now, not everybody has time for therapy. Not everybody has time to do all that, or the wherewithal. And I think what's interesting about improv is it is a forced effort in a playful way to do self-reflective work. Whether that's what people get out of it, I don't know, right? But like to do it, to do self-reflection in a playful way, I think that's such a cool opportunity for a lot of people.
All right, we're gonna pause it there. We're gonna stop right there, give you a little break, let all that ruminate and simmer in your mind. While we have this break, this episode, this conversation has really brought to mind our conversation with Graham Bodie. It's episode 77 in the catalog. You might want to go take a listen in between. Graham is a professor of listening, basically. He studies it. He is a really sharp dude. So go check him out. All right, we'll see you in a couple days.